Good morning. Welcome to News Center Maine's Political Brew. Glad you could be with us. We're joined today by attorney and longtime WGAN Radio morning show host Ken Altshuler and Ray Richardson of WLOB Radio. Gentlemen, good to see you again.
You as well.
Be back.
Lots been going on the last week or so let's get into it. The acting Secretary of the Navy came to Bath Iron Works and the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. Our congressional delegation was showing him around and urging the Biden administration to build more warships. Now, that administration is clearly willing to spend a lot of money with the proposals we've seen already. Ray, is there going to be some money left over for this priority?
Yeah, I think probably. I mean, there was a recent study that came out from the DOD in September of 2020. The Chinese Navy has overtaken ours. I think they currently have 360 ships, and we have 297. The United States Navy has said it wants 349. The Chinese has said in the same time period they're probably going to get up to about 400. So clearly, we need to be building ships, and I think that there will be.
Ken?
Well, there doesn't seem to be any lack of use of the printing machine in Washington, D.C. Anytime we want to bail out, we have, $2 trillion. We just print out more money. And that may be great. I mean, Joe Biden has certainly earmarked money for infrastructure, for vaccinations, and for the environment. So will there be money spent on defense? Sure. Joe Biden is an old school Democrat, believes in a strong defense. I think he'll earmark money for the defense, too. But, money runs out at some point unless you keep printing it. If you keep printing it, you're going to have inflation. So better watch out.
Today, we're taking steps to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis.
Also this week, the president calling gun violence a public health epidemic. He signed several executive orders to address the problem. The Maine Republican Party jumped quickly to declare Biden's actions unconstitutional and promised that elected officials in Maine are on notice that undermining gun rights will cost them politically. Ken, are President Biden's orders a threat to lawful gun ownership?
I don't think anything's going to really make guns or the Second Amendment not be interpreted the way it is. I mean, we've been here before. We've been here with the threats of, we're not going to be able to have guns anymore. Congress doesn't do anything and hasn't done anything about gun control. The simple thing about expanding background checks has gone nowhere. So I applaud Joe Biden for doing something. Sure, if the act in 2005 that allowed gun owners to not have any exposure to lawsuits, if that got rescinded, that would seriously have an impact on the gun industry. That's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. And so, no, it's not going to really impact gun ownership in any capacity.
So for me, I think the president made a big deal about taking executive action. And the problem with the actions that he took is none of those actions would have had any impact on the recent tragedies in Colorado and Georgia and Texas. The Colorado tragedy, that situation was a lawfully bought gun. What we really need is to provide adequate mental health facilities here so that we can get people into treatment. The family in Colorado stated repeatedly they felt that their loved one was acting in a very odd manner, waving the gun around. They were actually scared, but they didn't feel they had a way to deal with that. If we don't start dealing with mental illness in this country, we're going to see more of this. Guns don't kill people. People pull the trigger. It was a mentally ill young man in Colorado. The young man in Georgia was clearly mentally ill. I know they tried to make it about Asian hate, but he said he was a sex addict and he was trying to get rid of the temptation. That's not someone who's rationally thinking. Kevin Joyce, Cumberland County Sheriff, has said the Cumberland County Jail is the de facto mental health hospital of Cumberland County. Until that stops happening, we're going to see this all over the country, and it's just going to continue. I was disappointed what the president did yesterday. Ghost guns have not shot up a lot of people. This gun show loophole that everybody likes to talk about is a red herring. It's not real. Every gun show dealer has a federal license, and they have to go through background checks. It's simply not true, but it's what we like to do in this country, make up red herrings so we don't deal with real issues.
Ray, I don't disagree with you that mental health is an essential part of this. However, first of all, the Colorado shooter used the brace on the pistol, one of the things that Joe Biden wanted to outlaw. But how about the red flag laws? I mean, that would have been an ability of police officers to intervene and take guns away from mentally ill people. So the red flag laws could be a good component, a good solution to possibly some of these problems.
We've got several election-related bills on the table in Augusta. We'll look at a few of those. First, one would create online voter registration. Ray, is that a good idea?
I don't like it. I'll tell you why. We had the guy that was the head of cybersecurity for the federal government come out 8 days after this past election and say that we had the most secure election in American history. That same guy was responsible for cybersecurity for the Pentagon and the Treasury Department, both who were hacked under his watch. If you have an online system, it will be subject to hacking, to nefarious things. Everybody does. We've seen the banks, we've seen credit card companies. I didn't realize that we had a problem in Maine where we were somehow hampering people by going to City Hall and registering to vote. I think this is, again, a solution seeking a problem.
Well, we're not talking about online voting, which is a different debate entirely. We register our cars online. I finally registered my car online. I don't have any problem with registering voting online. I think the security issue, and I don't think there is any, would be with online voting, not online registration.
And voter ID is back before lawmakers again. Opponents say it adversely affects the poor and people of color. Ken, is having a photo ID requirement really a barrier to a lot of people casting ballots?
You know, I differ with my liberal friends on this. I don't have any problem with voter ID. I think that if you're going to vote, I think showing a driver's license or some ID, as long as there's a variety of ways you can show it. Many states have, you just show a utility bill or something in your name and address. It's a small thing to do to make sure that there's no question that you're voting in the right town. I think you got to pick your battles, and I think this is one that the Democrats and liberals should not pick, Frank.
Well, I agree. Photo ID is a very common thing in this country to do a multitude of things. In fact, to do most things. My friend Rich Sieber, who's a state rep out of Naples a number of years ago, had a bill in that said you had to present a photo ID. If you didn't have one, the government could provide you one for free if you needed it to. And if that was still too much of a burden, then you could make yourself known to someone at the polls who could then make you known to the warden. So just having somebody verify who you are, however we do that, if we're worried, Washington has this monstrous bill, H.R. 1, going on. They say it's about voter suppression and voter integrity and security. Well, I think one of the things we could do to ensure trust in the election is for people to be able to demonstrate they are who they say they are when they go to vote.
My warning, if you will, to corporate America is to stay out of politics. It's not what you're designed for.
He, of course, is targeting the companies which have been critical of Republican-sponsored voting laws. Ken, does this sound strange coming from someone who strongly supported the Citizens United ruling that gave corporations free speech rights to spend whatever they want on politics?
Of course, and it's classic congressional hypocrisy. You know, Mitch McConnell stopped the vote on a nominee from Barack Obama for the Supreme Court and then warned the Democrats not to do the same thing if they had an opportunity to. So, of course, you speak about what's best for your policy. Look, if corporations are people and they can give unlimited money to campaigns, then they can certainly take action when they think it's political in their financial best interest. Whether or not Coke or the Home Depot or Delta Airlines should do something in protest of the Georgia law is an individual decision. They're going to get flack on both sides of it. It's their decision what to do and what not to do. Quite like the Masters, who decided to proceed with the Masters despite the fact that other places were being boycotted. But yeah, you can't pick and choose when you take a stand. And Mitch McConnell is famous for picking and choosing a stand depending on which way the wind is blowing.
And Ray, if you believe in free markets, then these companies have a right to do what they want, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, look, all of Congress is hypocritical in this whole thing. McConnell is being a hypocrite here. He's a big proponent of Citizens United, except when it doesn't work in his favor. The Democrats are using these corporations who they don't want to have a voice under Citizens United to have a voice to put pressure. This is what I think. I think corporations should do what they want to do. And then the public, I'm not a boycotter, but then the public should reply. We're just in crazy town here. What we're seeing is utter hypocrisy on both sides, McConnell included.
In Washington, earmarks are back. Congress banned these funding initiatives as requested by members a decade ago after some abuses were evident. But there are now some new rules, guardrails, they say. Ray, are earmarks good for Maine, a chance for Maine's delegation to have some big influence?
I mean, I guess this is just such a scam and a sham on the American people. We don't even pass a traditional budget in Washington anymore. We just do a series of continuing resolutions. Maybe that'll change because the Democrats had the House, Senate, and of course the presidency. What I would wish for however they do this, and they can call it earmarks, was a political term, is they would just be transparent. And that if you've got a bill, for example, this infrastructure bill, which I don't oppose, that it be for infrastructure, that it doesn't have something to do with childcare as part of the provision is. Just have a bill that deals with the issue that you're dealing with. Well, Congress can't do that because what they do is load up stuff they know you won't go for in hopes that the stuff you do go for outweighs that. And this is a bad system for the American people. So I think earmarks are terrible.
What do you think, Ken?
Well, I don't disagree with Ray. I think earmarks are the ability of a congressman or woman or a senator to bring home the bacon to their own district. And but the problem was when they stopped earmarks 10 years ago, the earmarks within the province of the executive branch. So instead of having 435 people spreading earmarks around, you had one. And I agree with Ray. If we could do away with earmarks for everybody, fine. I think Ray's right also that transparency is key. Now, this new proposal is supposed to have transparency, and it's supposed to show what you're giving and who you're giving it for. And Ray's quite right. The bridge to nowhere is a classic example of a waste of money by an earmark. Had nothing to do with the underlying bill. So if we do have a bill, like Ray said, infrastructure, we keep it with infrastructure, we have transparency, and we don't just benefit one state or one district and it's spread out among the country, then I'm for it. Will that happen? I'm not very optimistic about it.
Well, let's turn to the arts. We've seen a lot of movies that are set in Maine but not filmed here. Should Maine be subsidizing filmmakers with new tax incentives as proposed in a bill now before lawmakers, Ken?
Absolutely. I believe in, look, as long as the net is a win and not a loss. In other words, you don't want to give away more than you earn. But you know, what's better PR than a movie filmed in Maine? And when you film something that's supposed to be in Maine and you're filming it in California instead, you know, and people can know that and notice that, it doesn't bring us the attention we need. So sure, always give incentives if it encourages more development, more economic benefit. As long as you don't lose money in the end, I'm all for it.
Ray?
I'll be honest, I haven't read this specific bill, so I don't know how it's constructed. We had a bill about a decade ago, which I thought was wonderful, and it came within a vote or so of passing. And what it would do is give back incentives based on money invested in the state for the film industry. Look, if we want to keep our young people here, we've got to create industries that energize them. The film industry certainly does that. That's a young person's game. We have a lot of infrastructure in this state already. People don't realize it for the film industry. What we don't have is an appropriate tax structure that really gives us an advantage. Let's face it, if you can go to tax-free New Hampshire, or you're in Maine with a heavy tax burden here, the truth is they look about the same. I love Maine, don't misunderstand me, but New Hampshire is beautiful as well. Just using that as an example. But I think a film has a lot of esoteric value to the state. Ken's right about this being an advertisement for Maine. You know, Message in a Bottle, which was shot largely in Outer Banks of North Carolina, but part of it was shot here in Maine, and most people don't even know that. And some of the most beautiful scenery in that movie was from Maine. That would be an attraction for people to come here. I think the legislature, for well over a decade and a half, have been very short-sighted on this.
And I would only argue that if it's a movie about clowns in the sewers, you don't want people to think that's in Maine.
Okay, we agree with that one.
Yeah, no dramas, no bad dramas, no scary movies.
Stephen King would be very disappointed by that. Let's talk about the winners and losers in politics this weekend.
Well, I'm going to start out with the loser of the week. I'm going to say Matt Gaetz, and I'm not going to say that he's guilty of what he's been accused of doing. He's, of course, the congressman from Florida who's been accused of misconduct. I want to point out that the DOJ began this investigation under the Trump administration. It's more that how he's reacting to it. And we, of course, expect people to come to a defense and say, I'm not going to resign, and it's all a sham and everything. But he also sent out a fundraising letter using this to get money for re-election. And I think at some point, you let the investigation go. You don't have to resign if you don't want to, but making it more political than it already is, I think is a mistake. He's my loser of the week. Winner of the week, Joe Biden. I think his executive orders on gun laws was good, mainly because Congress is not doing anything. And I know we criticize executive orders because we don't think presidents should take over legislative powers. But when Congress won't act, the president must. Good for him. I hope Congress will actually do something in response to this.
And Ray?
So oddly enough, Ken, with all due respect, my loser of the week is Joe Biden because he took the actions he took instead of doing demonstrably what he could have done if we had started a robust conversation here on how to address mentally ill people in this country and get them the help we need. I would have applauded it. I think he also would have found a lot of Republican support for that in the Congress. So Joe Biden's my loser of the week for that. My winner of the week are the people of Maine. It looks like spring is here. It has been a long year, and it's time to get out and enjoy the beauty of Maine.
Amen to that. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. Thank you for joining us on Political Brew. We'll see you next time. News Center Maine is back after this.